All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us once again on Did You Know, the ESCO HVAC show. So we've spent a lot of time over the last few months in the residential refrigeration side, right? Talking about our refrigerant transitions, our A2L transitions away from what we've been comfortable with in the past, moving into these new generations of mildly flammable and in some scenarios, highly flammable A3 refrigerants in commercial applications. But we don't spend a lot of time talking about all of the transitions that's happening in commercial and industrial. And so that's what we're going to do today. We're going to spend some time with our friends over at Matelex. How are you guys doing today?
Doing great. Thanks for having us.
How about you?
I'm doing very well. So we have David Reitz and we have Gary Epright, both very, very deep into the commercial refrigeration side. And definitely, Todd, thanks for joining us. We always like to know how large this community of HVAC and refrigeration professionals is. And so let us know where you're joining in from. I'm here just outside of Brownsburg, Indiana. Ty, thanks for hopping in here today. I know you're down in Texas. And where are you guys joining in from?
I'm in Vermont today.
I'm in New Haven, Connecticut.
Excellent. All right, so let's spend a little bit of time, let's introduce yourselves and a little bit about Matelex and the involvement in the industry.
Okay, thanks, Brenton. I'm David Reitz, Matelex U.S. Partnerships, and Gary's joining as our technical consultant. And Matelex is a family-owned refrigerant business. Been in refrigerants many, many years, 150 years. Wow. They were the first importers of refrigerants from the U.S. to Europe, and on their fifth generation now of family management.
Wow, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah,
so they've seen a lot. They've seen all the transitions.
They've seen all the transitions, and one of the rough runs was in the '80s with the Montreal Protocol.
Yeah.
So during the '80s, they were challenged with a lot of new entrants, new molecules, and one thing that they decided was to become more sustainable. Look at new refrigerants that would be better for the environment. They became involved in SME in Europe, globally with the UN, and one of their investments was into leak detection because leaking refrigerant to the environment was something that they didn't see as sustainable.
Absolutely.
And Matelex was their investment. Currently, 863 tons of refrigerant under supervision. They have 10 plus years in indirect leak detection, and we'll get into the technicalities of different types.
Yeah, because that's a fairly new term to a lot of people. That'd be a really good one to dive into.
Okay. And then 4,000 plus installation under management. Typically, and they're working with the most challenging commercial installations. 80% of their market is supermarkets, 20% cold storage. Supermarkets leak, it's a rate about 25%, but under management of the Matelex systems, the average is 8%. So they've achieved a very good level of success.
Yeah. So Gary and I both have a commercial refrigeration background. We spent a lot of time in this side. So we've both seen those scenarios. We've seen systems that are managed well, and we've seen systems that are not very well managed. And we've had a lot of regulations, controls, regulations that have changed over time. And we're going to spend a little bit of time today talking about that. And we really do potentially have some additional regulations that will be coming in the near future. So it's very important for people to understand what has actually happened in this. And so really the Montreal Protocol was kind of the establishment for us to start really getting serious about refrigerant leaks. And then as technology has moved, we've had some adaptations to that, and some that people aren't even particularly aware of. So this is a great topic to dive into. I'm glad you guys are joining us today.
Yeah, so moving from CFCs, much of the refrigeration went into HFCs. And so the ozone was protected, but HFCs are known to, be very high in CO2 equivalent, 1,000, 2,000, 4,000 times the CO2 level per molecule. And so now the regulation's gone from the Montreal Protocol to the Kigali Agreement, which is the international agreement.
Treaty. Yeah.
Yep, to regulate HFCs and to reduce the amount of HFCs to the atmosphere. And now, which we'll get into, the U.S. is following that with the 2020 AIM Act regulation, which will provide some details.
Yeah. So the AIM Act is really starting to reestablish regulations and authority to the EPA way beyond what they were given through our previous Clean Air Act, right? So a lot of people are familiar with their Section 608 and their Section 609 for air conditioning that was established during the AIM Act. But now we start through the Clean Air Act. But now that we start moving into the AIM Act, we're going to see some changes, and we've already begun some of that most people probably didn't even realize.
So I'll dive just right into the AIM Act here.
Sure.
It has three main mechanisms that they are establishing and rolling out rules. The one is phase down of HFC's production and consumption through an allowance allocation program. And this little red circle here is 2024 because it takes a big chunk down this year. And we'll be at 60% level versus the previous years. And so this is already established. It's already happening. The second is facilitating transition to new refrigerants. And you mentioned A2Ls. That's one of the refrigerants that they're establishing a way to have that in the marketplace and investing in that. And then the third part of the regulation is all around refrigerant management, and it has to do with reporting, tracking, and importantly, a lot around leak management.
One of the questions that just came in from Patrick Murphy is this in relationship to the green chill that we hear a lot about from EPA?
It is. So it is. So Green Chill partnership is an EPA partnership which has substantially supermarkets as their members, who have said that their goal is to reduce the amount of leaks that they have to the atmosphere. And it's a voluntary program where they share best practices, they learn from each other, they look at new refrigerants such as CO2, they look at leak management technologies, and they share with each other. And we've been part of their group for the last several years. And I would also say you can also look at North America Sustainability Refrigerant Council.
Yes.
They are a leader in this area as well. So those would be two good recommendations for resources.
Absolutely.
Yeah, David, I would add the Vermont Efficiency Group as well, because they go beyond the borders of Vermont and they're active across the country and have programs, basically, several programs. I think we were talking to people in Hawaii and other places that they're looking at, and they have some funding to promote this type of technology.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, so we're starting to see a lot of groups that are joining the effort to really control our release of particularly HFC refrigerants into the atmosphere. And so on the residential side, we keep talking about the changes that are happening, and here in our commercial industrial, it's probably more active, I would say, than where we are in residential.
So just kind of getting deeper into the AIM Act, they have their proposed ruling, and if you're interested and if you're affected by this regulation, definitely recommend reading the proposed ruling, Section H.
Oh, yeah.
Section H deals with the management of leaks and also reporting, and really defines where they're taking this regulation. They're in the rulemaking process, so they've put out these proposed rules. Their goal, and I talked to a policy person, is to have the rules established in June,
Right.
before the change of the 6 months before if there's a change in the U.S. administration, federal administration, they can take all the rules, head executive, the president can take all the rules established during the last 6 months and say, okay, you got to go rewrite those. And so to not have that risk, they're trying to establish it in June. So
Wow.
June's going to be an important date and important time. And when those come out, I'm ready to jump in and start reading them right away.
Right, because we keep talking about the potential for the required training certification for A2L refrigerants as, potentially by September. And now we look at it and go, this is very, very realistic that not only could we potentially see this residential, but in commercial industrial, we have new leak rates to be looking at. There are a lot of things that are happening through the AIM Act that people keep saying, oh yeah, we're gonna start looking at this, and I'm sure we're gonna hear things about it, not realizing that most of this is probably going to be impacted before this presidential candidacy is over. So I hadn't thought about it from that perspective, actually.
And really a lot of because we were working with a lot of U.S. supermarkets, and a lot of the large supermarkets really understand, they're planning for it, and they understand actually some of the actions can be a positive for them from a business standpoint, not only sustainable, but they have good ROIs and whatnot. But as some smaller and medium markets don't have it on their radar yet.
Yeah.
The large installers, they really know what's going on. They've got a lot of experts on it. They're doing well, but the knowledge still is not disseminated. But it's getting there.
Yeah. Well, with efforts like this, I mean, it's really, we do this show so that we can bring in industry educators from every sector of our industry. Jason Abjute from our team always talks about this tree of our industry, that we are all on these different branches, all from the same tree, and that we are all continually growing and evolving in same and similar ways. So the importance of being able to have this discussion is not only for our commercial and industrial technicians and educators, is to understand that the whole residential side is kind of moving along with everyone. It's not just the residential that's being affected by this.
Yeah. So someone just wrote about Section H. That's definitely the one to focus in. And what I have here, these 4 points, are really pulled out of Section H, and
Sure.
it provides a little bit of perspective on some of the leak language. So they are proposing leak rate calculations for any system of 15 pounds or greater on refill.
Right.
That is pretty wide-reaching, proposal.
Yeah.
The second is that there should be periodic leak detection for most systems, and then for systems that are 1,500 pounds larger, they have to have automatic leak detection. And that's something we'll focus on a little bit here. What is automatic leak detection? Because technically, knowing what that is, you can solve for the regulation.
Regulations, yeah, absolutely.
And then automatic leak detection also comes with its own reporting requirements. So you gotta, understanding that.
Not only have to monitor it, you're actually going to track it, like we've talked about doing before, but didn't enforce. But now we're getting to more of an enforcement period of time in our industry.
And then the last thing, and I put this under automatic leak detection because depending on which system you would choose for that, there's general reporting and record requirements for leaks to be kept for 4 years. This is on the proposal, but some of the leak detection systems can be used to keep the records for reporting, and that's an important feature.
Sure, good software application.
And then we put, Gary and I were talking, so we put some ideas about, and talked to some of our colleagues in Europe as they have already gone through F-gas regulation, and I think they're going through it now the 3rd time. What are some of the things that can happen here? So HFC prices increase. We've already seen them
Seen that
increase.
already. Yep.
In Europe, they went up 10,
Very
11,
significant.
15 times. And a lot of companies have prepared for it. They've banked some refrigerant. Some have not. So, but we feel that this is going to happen. Availability issues, products, and then technicians availability, and also being trained
Yes.
for the new technology. We see that as a possible impact. And just just 1 week ago, there was an arrest in a man in California. Under the AIM Act law, he was the first one caught smuggling HFCs across the border into the U.S.
Yeah.
Which is a direct impact from the law. And, a broad impact. I mean, this will affect small, medium, and large companies alike. And we do have we do feel like small and medium, as regulation happens, sometimes unintended consequences is they cannot keep up as much. So we really are trying to educate ourselves just as a company about leak detection and why it's important, and what the AIM Act means for them.
Yeah, we keep stressing, particularly to our educators. This year, just a month ago, at our National HVAC Education Conference, we had a record number of educators as well as distributors and contractors that were there to learn about the changes that are happening, because now everyone is starting to understand how this is going to impact them, how the shortage of HFC refrigerants are going to be multiplied in a very, very short period of time. And what are those solutions? And really, this is what we're talking about, is being prepared for these transitions.
So I'm going to. Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, David. I just wanted to bring up that the fine that was just made to Climate Wire was $416,000, and have to destroy 1,693 pounds of refrigerant
That were imported.
So, yeah,
that's pretty significant.
Yeah, well, it is, and it's nothing new. I mean, back in the 12 and 22 days, they've tried to smuggle that in the country as well, and a lot of people think drugs are the biggest smuggling thing that has been caught and basically fined or people put in jail. Actually, the largest smuggling event was a load of R22 that came in on a ship in New Jersey, and it stood for a lot of years. It may still be standing for all I know.
I've heard about that. Yeah, and one of the big problems with that is that we don't have those purity inspections along the way, and we get introduced moisture and other contaminants into the refrigerant that now gets introduced into the systems, which just compounds the problems, not including air and other non-condensables.
So people are getting desperate, I guess it's a symbol of, because that's usually when smugglers take advantage.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
In essence, a lot of these things only made sense from a financial standpoint too, and it's kind of surprising that companies haven't been more proactive about programs. Leaking refrigerant, if you lose refrigerant, it's costing you money to fix the leak, it's costing you money to replace the leak, it's costing you money all the way up and down the spectrum. So in some ways, what the federal government and state governments are doing is just in response to the industry and not taking care of it itself.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we keep saying, especially we have seen some comments on reclamation. If we would have been doing proper leak repairs, proper refrigerant monitoring and tracking along the way, we wouldn't have been in the scenario that we actually are in right now. So unfortunately, some of this is very much self-inflicted.
Indeed.
So now I have the definition of automatic leak detection. So this is referred to in the proposed ruling, and it comes from this is the U.S. code. It can be very similar to some of the other global definitions, or it can be different. So I don't know if that's saying anything, but to I guess know what your local definition is for outside the U.S. But for the U.S. code, this was established for R22 OSD refrigerants and has been reapplied to HFCs.
Right, to replacements.
Yeah, so it's in the AIM Act, it's in the CARB regulation in California, and it also, with implementation of automatic leak detectors, you can eliminate costly manual checks. That's one of the benefits that you have from automatic leak detection. And really, they defined in the definition two different types. One is direct detection, and one is indirect detection. And you can see some of the points that they have. I guess a couple of the key ones are technically, what does the direct detection need to be able to do? It needs to be able to detect refrigerants at 100 parts per million. And if you're not covering an area with a direct detection, which is termed sniffer technology, then the rule of being manually checking the area for leaks still applies. And
Sure.
It's a little different between direct and indirect.
Yeah. And one of the problems with total direct leak detection, if you think about like a modern grocery store and how far apart the cases are from the actual rack rooms or from the condensing systems or where your monitoring is, can you imagine if we have to have a direct refrigerant leak detection system for all of your remote cases in a grocery store? That's a lot of space that has to be covered with technology. And so that's when we start talking about this new indirect detection, which is really your specialty.
Yeah, and you're right. And the direct detection is excellent for safety. It was developed for safety. It's a great technology. And we do have a slide that shows the strengths of the different technologies. Indirect detection is good for very complex systems and for checking the entire system for a leak. And here, just from a technical standpoint, it has to be able to measure an indicated loss of 50 pounds of refrigerants, or 10% of the full charge, whichever is less. Okay. So when looking at indirect detection technologies, if it's going to be compliant, because there's several out there and they have different strengths and whatnot, but this is key to be compliant.
Sure, absolutely, because then it supersedes your 10%, 20%, or 30% leak rates. Now we're just saying, well, we're just going to make sure that we're covering it by 10%. We get all three of our areas. Yeah. It makes sense.
So this slide shows different common leak detection, and it's complex. It's got 4 on top, and it's got 5 different values on the left-hand side there, and it goes generally from temperature sensors to indirect, from oldest technology to the newest technology. Okay. And each one of these has its place in managing refrigerant. Temperature sensors, and we often get this, people say, well, that's not a leak detector, and they're right. It's not a leak detector. It's a problem detector, but people use it to detect leaks because they say, oh my gosh, we have an issue, and then they find out that issue is a leak.
Yeah, the last rack on this line is losing temperature. It's got a leak.
And it's usually too late.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then manual, which is the handheld, which you can go through the entire store and use that to do checks. It is the only way to pinpoint the area of leak in order to repair. It's needed for that. It's very costly though to do those entire checks. Yeah. Direct detection. That's that sniffer direct detection technology we talked. Very good for safety.
Add into the cases, add into the rack rooms, add into places where we can detect the loss of refrigerant in spaces.
Yeah. And then the last is indirect automatic leak detection. That's the area that we play on. It's the most advanced technically. It uses IoT. It uses algorithmic learning or some type of learning algorithm.
Okay.
And this is the most advanced. We've been doing it for 10 years. And each one of these, from left to right too, there's different solutions in each one of those. So evaluating where you want to be, where you want to be for refrigerant management, what your needs are. Direct detection, if you have a very simple one room that you need to really check for leaks, then that can be by itself can be a very good
standalone system. Sure.
So these are the basics.
Okay.
Gary, I don't know if you have additional.
No, it's Indirect probably solves so many problems because you're looking at it in different states at different times. The algorithm can compensate for temperature variations in the system which occur. It's just having a computer watch something 24/7 instead of trying to use the human element is just so much better than what you're doing. Now, that's not to say that the direct and the temperature sensors can't help us identify where the possible leak is at. That's all part of the analysis that the tech has to go through when he hits a store. So he has a starting point and some place to look. But definitely just knowing you have a problem for sure. You're not going to be getting a false alarm and sending a bunch of techs into a store to try and find something that's not there. The algorithm is going to identify a real problem in real time. And from that point, you have an issue, and it gives you a leg up when you get to the store because at the end of the day or at the end of the shift, you have to find something because it's there.
Yeah, absolutely. I know even in my E2 days where I was doing programming for rack refrigeration, we would come up with ways to kind of monitor systems, go, okay, I can put some temperature thermistors on my receivers. I can put some temperature thermistors on, a variety of different components along the system. And then I can monitor exterior temperature, ambient temperature. And then maybe I've got a TD on some sensors, and then I can use a outdoor temperature and come up with my own formula for, okay, if during the summer or during the winter, when I'm the hottest or when I'm the coldest, if I hit these set points, I've probably got something going on my rack charge. But now we're talking about actually using those inputs in using algorithms to constantly monitor the scenarios, looking for those changes in conditions.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. And the system checks 24 times a day, once an hour. You're taking samples every 6 to 7 seconds.
Oh, wow.
So, it's a use of data. One of the big problems I think we still have today is that we collect all this data. We collect miles of it. But unless you use it, what's the point?
Absolutely. I just did a show a few weeks back with John Ellis called Turning Data into Dollars. And that's really what it's doing is it's using the technology, it's using the analytics, it's using IoT, it's using AI to do calculations that we can't do mechanically and manually. We don't have the time to do it, fortunately. Cool.
And then just one last difference between that direct and indirect is that there is, we have a lot of outside installations too.
Sure.
Which the direct detection and you can't really monitor, but indirect has that capability.
Yeah.
And then we just added a couple slides like, okay, the EPA is putting these rules, the U.S. is globally, but why is it important? And one thing. And this is Project Drawdown, which ranks the top 100 things that you can do to decarbonize kind of our
industrial environment,
our world. Yeah. And what I was very surprised to learn that refrigerant management was number one because it's something that's actionable. So they rank actionable solutions, and then second. So it can really help to make an impact on the environment. But the other thing, which I think is really important, and if you actually go to our website, you can see this. We have an impact calculator, which will say, okay, if you reduce leaks, if you put in refrigerant management, indirect detection, direct detection, however you want to manage it, if you do it, what does it mean? And the other impact is a real financial impact, and as costs are going up, So this is an estimated calculator that you can do. And we see ROIs under a year consistently for leak management for our indirect system.
A question just came in from Anthony. Thank you for bringing this up, Anthony. It's a very, very good point. When we start talking about A2L leak detection, particularly in the residential applications, so when we talk about the M1, M2 standards that we're setting mitigation controls for residential split systems, what that is actually defining is at what point do we add automatic leak detection on systems that have A2L refrigerants. Now, that is really designed for the release of these mildly flammable refrigerants, but what it does in the process is it adds our automatic leak detection in that so that we know when we can monitor when we're actually having a problem and put even residential systems into alarm. So it's actually less than 5 pounds. If we look at that M1 standard, it's based on the refrigerant itself. And I don't have the chart in front of me. I think it's 4.1 pounds for 32 and 3.9 pounds for 454B. It's one or the other, but approximately 4 pounds, we're going to start adding refrigerant leak detection systems called RDSs, but in actuality, it is a ALD. It's an automatic leak detection system that is going to shut the system down, put it into alarm, turn the fan on for mitigation. So we are using a combination of refrigerant detection and automatic leak detection. Same principle, just in that residential M1 classification above M1, we're going to be using that for detection of mildly flammable refrigerants. But as a bonus, we get automatic leak detection. Yeah, good point.
Very cool. Yeah, I'm just learning something. Thanks for that.
Hey, that's why I wanted to bring this in. I mean, we have so many discussions about what's happening in residential, and we just don't focus on what's happening elsewhere. I mean, we're all going through these at the same time.
So we'll go through an example here of application and how a customer chose and what they were deciding as they chose a leak detection system.
Okay.
So this is a customer in Europe, Auchan. It's a leader grocer. It's 2,000 locations. 36 billion in sales. Same size as like a HEB in the U.S. or ShopRite in the U.S. It's a sizable. And they were going through, back in 2014, they were going through their first iteration of their AMAC, the F-gas. And they wanted to do more of an environmental approach too as a company. So they knew they had leaks. They knew that it was costly, and they wanted to pick a solution. So they came up with these. At the bottom is their evaluation criteria. And so depending on the company, they'd come up with their own, or an installer group might have something different. This was for the end user. And OpEx, CapEx, return, reactivity, ability to connect and work between their installer maintenance group and themselves. So they had their evaluation criteria, and they looked at different direct technology and indirect technologies to be able to do that. And they did evaluation of those.
Okay.
After the evaluation, they did what they termed a large-scale pilot, which was 109 supermarkets. And these 3 boxes at the bottom go through the 3 years of reporting. So 2014, they started the project. 2015, they evaluated different solutions. 2016, they implemented on 109 supermarkets. That year, because they were being able to be more reactive with leak management, they saved 28%. My gosh, my eyes are bad.
Yeah, 28% reduction.
28% of on refill that year, and then over time they got up to 39% because they got some savings that year, some savings the second year, some savings the third year. They validated that by rolling that out into their first market, which was France. They put it in 5 or 6, and doing their return on investment, which, they're self-reporting less than a year. And then finally, which would be similar to in the U.S. of going kind of across the U.S. states, they went across Europe with this and scaling it in 2018. So, but I think one of the keys is how they evaluate it, and then they will have. There's a lot of recommendations on how you implement it, training of general managers, working with your installer group, documenting best practices, and that's on the, after choosing the technology, the implementation is really important.
Yeah, I can see that. And that's some huge cost savings. I know, if you think about a grocery chain that goes through thousands of pounds of refrigerant, sometimes in a single charge. I mean, I had one store that lost a compressor valve plate gasket on a medium temp R22 rack and dumped 1,400 pounds of R22 in about an hour.
Wow.
So when we think about things like that, that one wouldn't have been able to be caught, except could have been caught, immediately by the automatic leak detection. And then again, if it had indirect. But think about some of the stores that have continual leaks that are, unmonitored.
Yeah. Well, and I'll share this one here. Arshan had direct detection in place. They had direct detection in place for safety, and they already had it in place, and they were detecting some leaks that way. But by overlaying indirect detection technology, they were able to evaluate the entire system instead of more of a point solution.
Yeah. Okay. So this is not going from no detection. This is going from automatic detection just to indirect for the monitoring and tracking.
Correct. And well, they still have their they still have their direct detection. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's pretty significant.
We do have an example of one that did not have direct detection. And maybe I can bring that up too.
Okay.
So this is big picture how it works.
Mm-hmm.
The IoT. So measure at the installation. We measure eight very specific data points, and from the natural gas law, PV equals nRT is kind of the basis of the understanding of gas. So the level changes, the amount of gas volume changes as the ambient air changes, as pressure changes, and it goes up and down through cycles during the day, during seasons, and we have an algorithm. So analyzed in the cloud or an installation that is a learning algorithm. So it spends 7 days learning the curve on that system, comparing it to the databases of the 4,000 installations so that it understands how it should behave.
Okay. Absolutely.
And then presents that information on a web app,
Mm-hmm.
and then can provide 2 different types of alerts. One is your classic low-level alert. So low level is you lose a certain percentage, and you've hit this line. It says there's an alert. But the most powerful one is a statistical alert, which says that this system is out of balance. It hasn't lost a whole lot of charge, but it's out of balance, and it's trending in the wrong direction. And that alert is the one that typically, and maybe on that I can show another example,
Mm-hmm.
will alert before there's significant refrigerant loss. And if there's a small leak, and we did an average 60 days before there was a temperature issue, you could detect there's a leak. So you save all that refrigerant that would be leaked during that time. And that's the power of indirect system, is that it's checking the entire system, and then it's giving you early detection. And by having that on the system, it's 24/7. Like Gary said, every 6 seconds, it's taking a reading and saying, hey, is this in balance or out of balance? Is it in balance or out of balance? It's verifying it, and then every hour it can give you an alert. So that's kind of the big picture of how the system works.
That's very interesting. So you can actually forecast before you hit that 10% leak rate threshold.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In fact, what we're working for the U.S. market is EPA reporting that will say, hey, you haven't hit the EPA 608 reporting
Required.
threshold,
Yep.
but you're trending towards it.
Yeah, exactly.
From our calculations,
Yeah.
check and, or, it could be fines and whatnot. So
Right.
that's one of the reporting modules we're working on
Yeah.
for the U.S. market.
From our calculation, we're going to have an EPA investigator on your site in 7 days. That's interesting. Just potential.
Yeah. So as an IoT in algorithmic learning, the measurements are key, and having the right measurements. And this diagram shows where we're taking measurements, and then you can see connectivity through Wi-Fi, Ethernet. We have a 4G. So that we can work in the cloud, not within the system, if a client would like to.
Which many of them would prefer that, so that you're not integrating into an internal communicating program. So yeah, that's a really nice option.
It's really great for small, medium companies. The larger companies, we're working within their intranet, and we even can work within their server, server platform if they want to. But for small, medium companies, it's a real benefit because we'll show you the energy data we do too, which is like another bonus for
Absolutely.
IoT.
Yeah.
But imagine like the current system where you don't know if there's a leak, or you're waiting for the temperature to go down, to a system where you're seeing detailed curves of the refrigerant levels. You're getting alerts. Our alert will say you're losing 50 pounds a day, 2 pounds a day, 150 pounds a day. So you can triage, how fast do I need to get somebody out there? So that's and this shows the bonus. We also, right in the rack room, look at the compressor data, and are able to say, are the compressors working efficiently or not?
Yep.
And how are they related to the leak rate? So this is another just kind of bonus for IoT and being connected. You're connected at the points that are most interesting. And for our clients like supermarkets, 50% of their energy cost is in refrigeration.
Yeah, absolutely. I just seen a factor in there that I'm very curious about. Are you actually calculating coefficient performance?
We are, yeah.
When are you coming to residential?
Yeah. Well, it's on the, I can't say soon, but it's on the development path.
Oh my goodness. Tell me more. Okay. That's another show right there.
So, as I said, intervening as quickly as possible thanks to the panel of alerts. So the refrigeration alert, energy drift, short cycling. If there is a compressor that's turning on and off, you'll get alert on that. Risk of compressor failure and more. You can monitor the settings, and there is, for our system, there's 2 web apps. There's a web app for the end user, and it's shared data. It's all coming from the same data, where if you have 100 installations, you see all your installations, you can manage them. And then the installer, which can do some configuration and some relearning if it's needed, and has a little bit different data, but it's shared on if work was done, if there was a refill, if there was a leak, all that information shared. And some of the big savings is being able to have the companies work together. We also can do, if there's a leak that's detected, fixed, we do a new relearning, and if it doesn't come within balance, we can indicate that the leak has not been fixed fully, or at what, And that check at the end ensures that 6 months later, they're not back in the store saying, oh my gosh, we got to, refill this up again.
Yeah, and I'm really curious if EPA accepts that as your leak check requirement, your follow-up leak check requirement, because if it's analyzing it, I mean, it should.
There is some proposed language on that for subsection H. There is language that, yeah.
Think about the reduction of employee cost for trip visits just for do leak analysis.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then here's just some of the achievable results. We showed the one example where it was about 40% savings.
Yeah.
The responsiveness we see up to 80%, and we have an example. I think it's on the next slide.
Okay.
And then lower cost of energy by 20%, and then visibility on the systems, and sharing that between the companies. So this example was done by a third party.
Okay.
And there was 4 different sites with 6 different installations, systems. And I'll just go through the first one here. This one, 9,000 meters, 800 kilograms of refrigerants. And here, it was actually a sizable leak, which we detected day 1. Now here, unlike Arshan, they did not have the direct leak detection.
Right.
So this one, day 1, we saw an alert. And the way that this study was run is the installer maintenance ran their contract, which was every quarter they would be coming out.
Yeah.
Unless
Manual detection. Yeah.
They did not get visibility into leaks. We got visibility into leaks, and the third party got visibility in leaks. So day 1, we on this first refrigerant plant here, we discovered a leak. We had an alert. Day 6, they repaired and found the leak. So we say, okay, on this we saved 5 days of reactiveness, and the amount of refrigerant you can see on this one is 80%.
Wow.
You can see the average over those 6 systems. On average, so the slow leak, which is the second 2, it's the third line there.
Mm-hmm.
That was a very tiny leak. We found it day 28. They didn't find it until day 103. So, but on average, they could be 60 days more reactive than doing the traditional waiting to be called in or coming in every quarter for just a standard check. And refrigerant savings up 79%.
Sure. I can imagine this is heavily evaluated under the new proposals under EPA for the AIM Act.
Yeah, so their rationale for putting in automatic leak detection and making it a requirement is this is the rationale.
Right here, absolutely. Yeah, there's our refrigerant that we need.
Yeah. And
all that refrigerant.
In subsection H, they describe this rationale. They don't have the calculations, but they describe this almost exactly the study.
Yep.
Yeah.
Love it.
We have a program here in the U.S. where we're working with supermarkets from the very large, medium, small, with 2,000 plus locations, 800 plus locations, 200 plus locations, and then 5 in single locations. Because but we have our UL rated product came out 6 months ago. We've got some installed in the US, and now we're rolling out with pilots, and we're always interested to try to solve problems. So if there's anybody interested in that, or just to talk automatic leak detection, we'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, because there's a lot of concern on choosing the right refrigerant detection system. because it can be all over the board. Am I looking for a single system that is, communicating or non-communicating? Do I have, a few inputs? Do I have dozens of inputs? What's going to be the cost of doing a traditional automatic detection system? And then we start looking at the indirect. You got a lot of options here.
Yeah.
A lot of solutions.
And the direct detection has, there's very good applications for that. And then I think when the ruling gets finalized, then it will allow for a lot of additional choice and evaluation.
Excellent.
So I just wanted to see if I had one other slide.
And any questions from the audience? I mean, there's still a lot of people out here that are very curious of what we're talking about with refrigerant detection. Plenty of time for questions. So if you have any questions, just please put them in the chat and let us know.
Oh, so this is, I just had put this, someone mentioned green shell. Here's a list of some resources of different, and the ASHRAE annual conference is very good. They've got a lot of technical sessions there.
And the National HVACR Education Conference. I got to get you to add one on there.
Oh my gosh.
We had about 1,200 educators there. And this was really a monumental year for us because people are very intrigued with what's happening with the AIM Act from all sectors, because it is affecting residential, commercial, industrial, other industries like foam blowing, automotive. I mean, we all have transitions that we're going through due to this HFC phase down.
Okay, I think that's the end of our slides here.
Okay, and that gets us right to the end. I do love that one. You can't manage what you can't measure. It really comes down to using data to make a difference. So tell us a little bit about how do we connect with Matelex?
So you're free to reach out to Gary or myself, and I don't. There you go.
Some web addresses on here as well, so you can go to matelex.com.
Yep, and there if you go do an inquiry, it will come directly to Gary and myself, and we're happy to talk automatic leak detection or the AIM Act and any questions. And we do have like a very deep bench because the Han Group is refrigerant experts. They have over 100 refrigerant experts. So for example, we're meeting with a CO2 expert that has been doing CO2 conversions in Europe for the last 8 years and knows, the good, the bad, the ugly, the best practices. And, we're learning from them. So if there's particular things we can't answer, we do have a lot of resources.
And that's one of the reasons I was very excited about having this conversation with you. In the past, we've had involvement from a lot of our equipment manufacturers, but it's not really been as much about diving into the rules, the regulations, the benefits, the solutions. And I think this year is very monumental for all of us because this is exactly what we're seeing. We're seeing manufacturers that are reaching out with education. That is the biggest value in our industry, knowing what is happening, knowing that the changes are here, and getting firsthand information, and then being followed up with the solutions. And I applaud you as a manufacturer of doing that for our industry.
Thank you. Yeah, it's such a big change. We're learning all the time, and then it's great to be able to share and connect with others.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I don't see any other chats that came through. I really appreciate everybody hanging out with us, learning a little bit more about the industry. We'll continue these conversations week after week by bringing different industry professionals in. We encourage all of you, whether you're in manufacturing, whether you're in education, you're at a distributor, you're a contractor that's looking to bring better training and better technologies and innovations into your organization. That's what we're here for. And we look forward to seeing you next year at the National HVACR Education Conference, when we look forward to seeing classes like this. So let's keep in touch afterwards, and might be some things that we can talk about in our classroom environments as well. I mean, this is a very, very good training program.
Thank you so much for having us.
Appreciate it, Cliff.
All right. Thank you, guys. And we will see you again next week on Did You Know, the ESCO HVAC show. Bye, everybody.
Have a great one.